Hey guys, George from SoundTraxx here with our next edition of On Board with SoundTraxx, our new weekly video series highlighting features and information about the Tsunami2 decoders. Today we're going to talk a little bit about momentum and breaks. So every decoder that's been out there for quite so many years has offered the ability to add momentum, which is simulating thousands of tons behind the locomotive and on the locomotive for that matter. Some of these locomotives themselves weigh several hundred tons. So with that, CB3 is our acceleration rate and CB4 is our deceleration rate. And what this does is this adds a little bit of momentum, in other words, delaying the acceleration of the locomotive rather than having an instant jackrabbit start and stop. So that way you get a more realistic transition, but also you get a more realistic sound effect to go along with it. So on this locomotive here, I've got CB3 set to a value of 35 and CB4 set to a value of 75. So this gives some nominal amount of momentum that's not very overwhelming, but gives you a little bit to see how it works. So let's take a look really quickly here. We're going to take our locomotive and we're going to jump to speed step 20. And after it gets somewhere around here, just because we don't have a whole lot of track, I'm going to cut the power or cut the throttle back so the locomotive will coast, and you'll see how long it takes to slow down. So now we'll cut the throttle. And you can kind of see how that locomotive slowly coasts to a stop, but doesn't take a very long amount of time. Now that you have the momentum set up in our locomotive, if you want to stop the locomotive or the train more quickly, you can use the brakes. Now on the Tsunami2, the F11 function activates and triggers the brake squeal sound effect, which is the sound of the independent brakes. But did you know that it also triggers a separate braking rate that actually works with the momentum that you've set in CB4 so that you can stop your locomotive more quickly, or you can take a little longer to slow your locomotive down. In this particular instance, we're going to show off here where we have the brakes stop the locomotive a little bit more quickly. Now, the independent brakes, as its name implies, are the sounds of the brake shoes that are on the locomotive itself that are used when the locomotive is running independent of the train, therefore the independent brakes. In this case, since it's usually being used when the locomotive is light, we're going to have it stop more quickly. So we're going to set up the same scenario. We have our locomotive here. We're going to move forward at about speed step 20, and then right around here, I'm going to trigger the F11, which is the sound of the independent brake. And we're going to see how quickly it stops now. You can kind of see how quickly it stops. Then we release our brakes and we can move forward again. And we cut the throttle, use our brakes. Now this works in both directions. We can move in reverse, the same thing. And you can feather the brake too. So you can trigger it on and off. So you can couple up to that locomotive and stop when you need to. Also, the Tsunami2 is equipped with another brake sound, the sounds of the automatic or the train brakes. Now, as its name implies, this is the sound of the brakes on the cars that are used with the locomotive to keep the train under control. Air pressure is sent through the train line, and when the air pressure is positive, the shoes are released off the wheels of the cars. But when you reduce that brake pressure, the brakes are automatically applied to the shoes, therefore bringing the train to a stop. But since the squeal doesn't work on the locomotive, you actually get a different set of sounds. Now with the Tsunami2, the F12 key will toggle you into train brake mode. Now when we do that, the first thing you're going to hear is you're going to hear the compressor cycle on as the train line is being charged. Then the prime mover will notch up to notch 3 as it tries to turn that compressor faster to charge the train line more quickly. Now in the real world, this would take normally about 10 to 15 minutes to charge the train line, but in the Tsunami2, we've got it set to around 30 seconds or so that it's a little bit of a quicker scenario. So let's take a listen really quickly. We're going to activate F12 first. And you can hear that compressor kick in. Now when we're ready, we'll say the train line has been charged. When we're ready to move again, you can set the braking rate to stop the locomotive more quickly, or you can have it take longer to slow down, so it works in conjunction with CV4. So for our same scenario, I've got it stopping the train more quickly than simply cutting the throttle, but not as quickly as it would when it's independent. So here we're going to move forward again, speed step 12 or speed step 20, and we're going to cut the brakes and turn it on right about here. So you're going to hear a different set of sounds as the air pressure is reduced in the cab. There's no squealing on the locomotive because the cars are dragging the locomotive to a stop. And then once it stops, you can set the rate to adjust how you like it. For more information on how to set this up, refer to the user's guide on SoundTraxx.com website under the Manuals tab. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact our support department at support@SoundTraxx.com for more information or help in setting these up. These values that I've given you are just some nominal values to try to get you started and to play with the feature. The values are adjustable. You cannot break it by changing CVs. If you could, we didn't do our job very well. So try it out, see how it works for yourself and your operators. Now, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, please let us know in the comments field below. And next week we'll tune in and we'll talk about our dynamic brake feature, which is, yes, a third braking rate that the decoder can activate and operate during your operating sessions.